Artificial intelligence is taking humans to places we couldn't go before. That's what makes this the age of with. The next question is, where can humans take AI? AI is an ecosystem we all contribute to and benefit from. The next important insight could come from anywhere. And with so much happening so fast, this ecosystem needs a focal point. We created the Global Deloitte AI Institute to answer that need. What role can AI play in my business? How can we use AI in trustworthy and ethical ways? Why isn't there more diversity in the AI workforce? How does my AI career start? And where is AI going next? The Deloitte AI Institute is leading the global conversation on AI. We are connecting businesses, universities, think tanks, policymakers, and startups. We are highlighting today's visionaries, data scientists, and emerging trendsetters. From the boardroom to the college lab, the Deloitte AI Institute is bringing forth insights and using our deep knowledge of all aspects of AI to make sense of this complex ecosystem, cutting through all the hype and providing insights to help enterprises make informed AI decisions. I'm Beena Amanat. I'm the Executive Director at the Deloitte AI Institute, where we are not just preparing to meet the AI future, we are shaping it together. Join me online to find out more.
Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining. We've got a great session prepared for you today with some awesome panelists who are going to share with you some of their lessons learned from working with our clients out in the field. Before we get going, just a quick introduction. My name is Jim Rowan. I'm a principal at Deloitte Consulting and leader of our AI and data operations practice. As I mentioned, this is part 2 of a 3-part series on evergreen value. In the first conversation, we had a great discussion around how you can treat data as an investable asset and really focus a lot on the concept of a data product and how you could drive value through the data products to your organization. We also talked about some of the challenges clients were facing, either it be legacy systems that they're working with, how to adopt generative AI into their solutions and pull that into some of the newest things that they're thinking about. So great session if you want to check it out. That's what we talked about first time. Today, though, we're really focused on this conversation around how to drive value from a cost transformation program. And how does AI and data play a role within that so that you're more than just taking cost out of the business, but spending time really changing the processes, the function, the way we work using AI and data technologies. We're going to cover that conversation across 3 topics or 3 functional areas: HR, finance, and supply chain. We really feel like this is a super relevant conversation for today. It's hard to miss a quarterly earnings report or conversation that doesn't talk about how organizations are trying to get more efficient and effective with their internal resources to drive value and ultimately help their customers at the end point. And so this conversation, I think, is going to be very relevant around those topics and something that should be very interesting for the group. With that, I want to introduce some of my panelists that'll bring this story to life. So without further ado, let's bring in Lane, Julian, and Marty. Lane, why don't you go ahead first with a quick introduction?
Hello, all. Lane Warshaw. I'm a managing director out of our Minneapolis office. I've been at Deloitte 15 years, and I have the responsibility of leading what's called our supply chain network optimization and AI and data practice and how they intercept in the marketplace. So very relevant to this topic and conversation. So looking forward to talking about how AI and data plays into this conversation.
Hello, everyone. My name is Julian Valerio. I'm based out of our Denver office. I'm a managing director as well, and I'm one of the leaders of our procurement and finance operate business, or our managed services business. And I've been in those particular functions for the last 25 plus years. And I'm really excited to join you all and discuss AI and how you can incorporate it into your business.
And hello, everyone. My name is Marty Marchetti. I'm a managing director out of our Atlanta office and a leader in our human capital practice, where we partner with our clients to help them navigate the various challenges they face, helping to bring insights and value to their business.
Awesome. Well, thank you guys very much. Again, appreciate your time today and sharing your insights. And I encourage folks on the LinkedIn Live session to go ahead and enter questions. If you have them in the chat, we'll be taking those questions as we engage in the dialogue. But first, maybe I can just sort of frame up a little bit about the conversation. So one of the research papers we put out a little while ago was a point of view around cost reduction. It really talks about sort of how a singular focus on cost reduction itself really misses the opportunity organizations have to really transform how they work and function. And I think one of the cool things about AI and data and what's happening in this space is that the use of AI technologies is really dramatically changing how clients look at their processes today. And instead of sort of doing incremental fixes, it gives organizations a chance to make fundamental changes about how they work and how they choose to work around those capabilities. Similarly with data and the importance that data plays in terms of driving decision making and also how it transforms the processes that clients' organizations use today. So with that sort of backdrop and set to the conversation, Julian, if it's all right, I'm going to maybe start with you and start to talk to you about one of the areas I'm interested in hearing a little bit more about, which is around finance. And what are some of the barriers that the finance function in general is facing around adopting things like AI and data?
Sure, Jim. Good question. In our conversations with numerous clients across numerous industries across the globe, the biggest thing we find is just simply, where do you start, right? Mm-hmm. How do you get started? How do you pick the right functions to try and improve using, whether it's AI or RPA or a bot, chatbot, whatever that might be? I think that's where most of our clients struggle, is finding the right spot and then determining, okay, do we use a full platform? Do we dabble and deploy different bots or RPA engines here and there within different functions? And then how many do we use? And I think that the real struggle is let's get in. What most people end up saying is look, let's try several different pilots, see what works for us. We're going to use maybe several different technologies to see what's most applicable to our business. And then from there, we can make quick decisions. So really, what can you stand up quickly to solve these particular problems? And then if you fail fast, that's great, right? Because then you can move on to the next opportunities. And that's what we see right now, is people trying to hone in on what opportunities will deliver the most value for them in a quick fashion to determine, hey, is that what we really want to do or not? And then from there, they can expand on and say, look, we're going to holistic look at this from a platform perspective. And then you got to tie it back to whatever the finance operate model is currently, and then where it's going to go in the future, right? Because if it doesn't fit into what the operating model is doing and what finance is giving back to their overall organizational and meet those goals, then it's just not going to work. So that's where we really see people struggle right now, Jim, in trying to figure out how to start is really where to start and how to do it.
Where to start within the organization. That makes a lot of sense. I hear that a lot as well. Is that, maybe it goes to Lane and Marty. Lane, maybe you first. Is that a consistent challenge within supply chain too as well? Where do I start? It's so vast. There's a lot of different places.
Yeah. So supply chain is a very broad topic. If you talk about the develop, plan, source, make, deliver, support, the whole area. What we advise our clients on is to pick a couple of areas where you're having a lot of spend, but a lot of reward, and to chip away at it. And where I see a lot of that is intelligent supply. Very often, it's how can I optimize my supply, especially in asset-based manufacturers. Can I look at my supply base? Can I use AI based on most of my raw materials or my direct materials, and understand how I can take cost out by simple using AI and statistics and things like that. So we've seen a number of push there. In overall visibility based on that. So, and then once you build that muscle memory, you build a capability, you start learning the data models and how to ingest data and start working on that program. So pretty consistent pattern, Jim, that we see in that area.
And I would just layer in, similar thoughts within the HR space, but even broader, what Lane and Julian were talking about as well, is the impact to the workforce exists across all three of these areas, right? How is the finance group handling AI? What's the change around that? What's the training needs that Lane and supply chain folks may need? And so when we think about HR, I wouldn't just narrow it into the area of HR and how AI plays a role in what the team members in HR do, but instead the impact to the workforce that exists across all of the areas.
Yeah, that's a great add-on to it, Marty. I mean, maybe building on that a little bit, I was thinking about sort of the concept of people analytics, right? Like we do a lot of analytics around data. I grew up in the finance space, so maybe more in the Julian space where we were doing analytics. Talk to me a little about how people analytics play a role more broadly, in some of these programs and cost transformations and broadly in the organization.
Well, so what's interesting about it is I think back in 2020, we probably entered the golden age of people analytics, right? The pandemic hit. Many of the HR leaders were asked to gather data related to the workforce work and workplaces in order to build out business continuity strategies, right? Mm-hmm. And most of our clients were able to do that, but it was very hard. And then on the heels of the pandemic in the spring of 2020 with George Floyd being murdered, bringing in a heightened level of attention to the BLM movement, DE&I, again, that brought the need for data more in the forefront. And then came the Great Resignation, right?
Right.
All stacked on top of all of this, and the need to understand who's leaving, why they're leaving, where to hire, how to replace them, and finally then the return to office. So while all this was going on, our clients were doing amazing things in data analytics and marketing, customer supply chain, and finance. But what this did was underscored how far behind most HR orgs were compared to their peers in the other corporate functions. So in a response to that, we're really seeing an acceleration of interest in and around people analytics in the market. And our clients have recognized there is an opportunity to make better decisions across areas related to the workplace, and making more informed actions by leveraging this data to sense, analyze, and act, right? So when you think about that, in order to do it effectively, you really need data in the right places, the right way, the technology platform, and an operating model.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I mean, and interestingly, you bring up some of the changes that we've gone through, pre-COVID, post-COVID, and in the world that we're living in today. I mean, Lane, we've seen that sort of a significant change from a supply chain perspective as well in terms of how it's impacted the function. Maybe you could talk to us a little bit about sort of how clients are viewing sort of the post-COVID view of the supply chain, how that's changing with an AI and data perspective.
Yeah, so, before COVID, there was a heavy investment on connecting the digital world to the physical world to get the most profit out of your supply chains. We saw a significant investment in smart manufacturing in order to better improve, how you can do manufacturing more efficiently. Smart operations, which is connecting things end to end, so that where your goods and services and raw materials are at every point, and additional visibility. What happened with the advent of COVID, it underscored the significant risk that we have in our supply chains for unpredictability. And so what that has done is actually we're seeing a continued investment in things like intelligent risk management and intelligent supply, where we use AI to determine risks in the marketplace, and where we can proactively understand where your supplier base is at risk or where their suppliers at risk, so multi-dimension. Where we have a connection from what you're manufacturing to it all the way used in the field, so that we can have a better and more robust solutions and insights on what we're producing. And if there's an issue, get it right back to manufacturing, so that we can enhance that. And with that, we're seeing an advent of investment in something called model-based engineering, which is to break down your manufacturing process in distinct little parts that you have those processes across your organization. And that's heavily AI involved. You really can't do model-based engineering and figure out your BOMs and your components and your processes at a micro level that can be used and decomposed without AI. So I just see that this is going to be more important over time. And a good example is if you take a look at our tech sector, we're now having to building fabs in the U.S. We've never done that right before. So there's a huge investment in an industry that didn't have it because of COVID. And it's exactly opposite of what we've done in the past. And we're seeing that in other industries as well. We can't be completely relied on China, Eastern Europe politics and things like that. to produce goods and services reliably, requiring data and analytics to be connected. While we're transitioning a little bit of a slower cycle right now, this investment will not go away because it's so critical to our businesses.
Well, it's interesting. And you're building on this concept of investment. And when I think about investment in client organizations, I think about sort of the CFO function in the finance department, and finance sort of approving, supporting these investments over time. Julian, I'm curious, like what you're seeing the finance function in terms of the role finance is playing, both as a steward around the financial decisions for the organization around AI and data, and within the function itself, like what they're doing around AI and data to help support the overall enterprise objectives.
Yeah, Jim, as you hit it on the head, right? We're here to support the supply chain function that Lane's constantly working with to improve, and then even downstream support Marty's organization in HR, right? So, and people are always constantly coming to us searching for information, right? So we have to be a provider of rich information. And as the guys talked about before the pandemic, there was a lot of investment in analytics in general, but also people were still implementing new ERP systems or moving to a cloud-based ERP platform or going through upgrades, whatever that might be. And so that fixed some of the inherent challenges that we had. And now it's more like, okay, how do we do more with less people? And how do we move to the workforce of the future, right? Because in finance, we're over the last 30 years been heavily centered on processing transactions. And now we got to move to exception-based processing, right? And that's where the AI comes in for us, as well as from a data perspective. We can now fix some of the data that we get from disparate sources or data sources, and it may not come in clean, right? So we got to clean that up, turn it into actual actionable insights that then we can give back to supply chain organization, potentially HR, the actual core business of whatever industry the client might be in. So that's where we're headed, Jim, is that we're moving away from finance into heavy transaction-based processing, into more skill sets within the workforce that are oriented around decision-making, right? And exception-based processing, so that we can provide that service back to the rest of the departments within the organization.
Yeah, I love it, right? And then finance just becomes a sort of AI-powered business partner, helping to drive the conversations across the enterprise. The interesting thing about this, right, you guys are hitting on is, I love where we're going with this. I hear a lot of conversations and questions about how do I do this with the legacy systems that I have today? And I think you guys all probably have your own stories of where you've run into this before. I've been in a few clients where I've been surprised, the systems are older than me, and I'm kind of wondering what's going on and how are these going to work with the cloud? So I know you've seen this a little bit too. I mean, Lane, you're smiling. Maybe I'll throw it over to you first.
Well, by definition of what I do, I deal with a lot of industrial products and construction companies. Mm-hmm. And what does that mean? I have companies that have 250 plus ERPs and factory systems that were built in the 40s, 50s, and 60s. So there's always a challenge. So there's no one right solution. I mean, the ultimate solution is implement one ERP and we'll go from there. Not every company is taking that path. Most often what we're finding is new models and technologies. All the hyperscalers, and we're in constant conversations with them and their partners around new technologies to pull out digital signals from factory floors with add-ons, such as using NVIDIA and Visual, using add-ons to the factory where we can make sense and context out of what's on the factory floor. And then as a service provider like Deloitte, a lot of what we are doing is coming up with standard manufacturing data models to understand what's coming from the common ERPs, SAP, Oracle, whatever that is, Bond, and how to take your customer base and your supplier base and your product base, make a common MDM layer so that you can use that for real-time interaction as well as making insights. So it's a constant issue we see. It's also very relevant to finance, because I've done some finance work, Julian, and it's very common there, especially depending on the industry. So it's a common thing that we see that enables these solutions.
Marty, are you seeing some of these same challenges from a legacy system perspective as you think about HR and how HR engages with the rest of the business?
Definitely. And just to echo what Lane was saying, it's just looking for the opportunities to use those add-ons or bolt-ons, right, that exist out of the core ERP system, right? Whether it's a front-end chatbot, right, that is taking in some of that intake from the employee base. Also, we're looking in areas in and around payroll, right, that we can plug into systems regardless of what it is, right? So to take some of the manual processing, for example, out of payroll, right? So just looking for those opportunities to do that as you're planning out your road to the cloud.
Makes sense. I mean, and so we've got these legacy systems. We're figuring out ways to navigate them. And in some cases, it's even legacy systems, but it's even newer systems with different versions trying to talk to each other. There's a lot of challenges in there. And then on the other hand, we have the generative AI event, right? The moment where now everyone's having a conversation about this and trying to figure out how the organizations can improve their capabilities with generative AI. How do you start thinking about that within the context of some of the functions that you're working with? And maybe, Julian, if you don't mind, I'd start with you for a minute, because some of the things I hear a lot about when we talk about generative AI is conversation around conversational AI and chatbots and things like that. Are you seeing that as a potential, solution where generative AI can get involved and help enhance those capabilities, or in other places?
Yeah, Jim, when it comes to the legacy systems, one thing we're starting to see, and we're doing on behalf of some of our clients, is building a business process workflow management platform, right? Where you can bring in information, whether it's invoices or bills or moving a little bit into lane space, but requisitions or purchase orders that are all coming from maybe 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 legacy systems, bringing it to a place where the people who have to process that work can look at it, make sense of it, start to pick out. Previously, you'd have to log into like all those different systems or have people dedicated to those systems, but now you can aggregate it in one location and start to look at trends, right? Provide back more decision making about, hey, we can go fix this. This is a process problem, right? We're getting this information from maybe the supplier or the vendors that's then causing us heartburn downstream and causing us matching exceptions, whatever it might be. So if we can pull it all into one place and we see these reoccurring themes, it helps the team basically have a cockpit, right? I think of a financial advisor that we all probably use in our personal lives. They can manage many of us at one time, right? Because they see all the information distilled in one area. And if you will, almost like a category management, if you're talking about the procurement world, in one place where you can really look at all the information, distill it, turn it into actionable insights, and then go back, make process changes and farm that information out to whether it's Marty in HR or Lane and the team in supply chain. That's what we're seeing is these business aggregation platforms being set up to do that and then push the actual work that needs to actually have a human intervene into that location. Plus, you're going to have some AI in there, maybe some chatbots to really expedite the process and enable them in a quicker fashion to reduce those touches. So that's what we're seeing right now, Jim, is these aggregation platforms in finance.
Yeah, that's super cool. Lane, from a supply chain perspective, what are you seeing?
So generative AI is a new concept, so people are trying to think through it. But some of the traditional things, if you think of supply chain, goes back into design, and that's where digital twins and 3D CAD drawings were. I think generative AI is going to really change the game there, and we'll see over time. One of the issues we have with developing products, whether it's one of our aerospace clients or whatnot, is data and simulation. And generative AI can truly change the game there, and then use in time in the field. So if they can shorten those cycles with the concept I introduced below with model-based engineering, these are game changers in the industry, because then you can not only produce it quicker, you can figure out how to manufacture it better for the quality to get better and understand the impacts of direct components, which are very important to the wear and tear of products, and then how you can logistics simulate that. We haven't quite figured out how important in all the different ways we can use it, but it's such a digital rich space that this is an area of real promise that we know that there'll be some big breakthrough solutions over time.
Yeah, you're hitting on one of the areas that the synthetic data generation, right? Like the ability to go test a product in a virtual world, see the behaviors of that product, and then the impact on it, so we can adjust maintenance, everything else, design. Time to market, how much that's going to improve is fascinating. You see this in the autopilot capabilities within cars, in terms of how many scenarios can we create synthetically so that we don't have to go run through them out in the real world. Fascinating. I love those ideas. And I think also to try to understand then what are the regulatory and other considerations around that, risk factors. Is the synthetic data as real as the real data, and does it going to count? I think will be interesting challenges for us to think of. Marty, I do want to leave you out in the conversation on generative AI. What's your take on how it's going to be impacting the HR function?
Yeah, if you think about it, think of a grid, right? With the columns being 4 focus areas: efficiency, right? So efficiency throughout HR, instruction, right, which is really important for HR, and those that they work with, right? Creation and experience. So just to give a couple examples, from a low complexity standpoint, answering general HR questions, that's been around for a while, right? Some of that is developing and getting better and better. And then as you move up in the efficiency column, you can think about things around like conducting labor regulation research. Imagine that you're sitting in front of your PC, right, versus going to 100 sources going to one, and you letting that aggregate for you. And then if you move into instruction, right, teaching an employee how to initiate a leave of absence, right? We've had that in different ways. Again, it's continuing to get better. If you move into creation, right, recommending photos to feature on recruiting sites, right? You know what I mean? Like, stuff like that, creating and editing HR portal content. We're seeing some of those examples out there in different spaces, but that's how it could pertain to HR. And from an experience perspective, chatting with virtual avatars to develop coaching skills, right? And the list goes on and on. So those are some of the areas, right, that impact across those 4 dimensions.
That's really exciting. I can envision exactly how those things would start to apply pretty quickly to a lot of things that we're doing. And Marty, we had an audience question I think might be more tailored to you, so I'm going to throw this one to you as well. How is AI going to transform hardcore data-based roles like digital recruiting and management? What are your thoughts on something like that?
Yeah, I think that's a great question, and I think traditionally recruiters and hiring managers work to interview and match candidates and jobs in order to fulfill the resource needs. But there's an evolving school of thought that advocates for organizations to focus more on critical skills versus jobs in order to be more agile, nimble, and give the workforce more opportunities. And so for that to work, you need to be able to catalog, track, measure, and manage a pretty broad range of skills in order to become a real skill-based organization. And that's where AI comes in. So there are talent marketplace applications that have been implemented as part of HR technology ecosystem deployments that apply AI and machine learning to match workers, both on and off balance sheet workers, to opportunities by matching and or inferring skills of candidates, right? And these technologies, such as Eightfold AI, takes a lot of human effort out of the matchmaking process, which accelerate time to fill open roles and also improving quality of fit. And a good example, in a financial service org, they developed a virtual career assistant. It uses artificial intelligence to mine employees' skills and interests internally to determine their most suitable jobs and where training can help them pursue new opportunities.
Wow, that's kind of amazing. I imagine that virtual coach should be very helpful. That's awesome. So thinking about those examples, that's really exciting to see what's coming down the highway for us in these areas. One of the other things, kind of maybe shifting from the current organization, how we're thinking about how we're performing today, to like what we see and how we use these tools to predict the future. Julian, I was seeing for you, kind of from a finance perspective, how are you seeing our clients, maybe give an example or two of where you're seeing them use AI, machine learning capabilities, things like that, to help drive some of their financial forecasts in their organizations?
Yeah, Jim, we see it at 2 levels. One, kind of more in the day-to-day working capacity where people are looking and saying, okay, can I predict using predictive analytics or AI who who may not be paying us, right, when we're collecting from our customers, right? So we see a lot of that. We also see people using it on the flip side in accounts payable to say, hey, should we take this payment discount? What does it do to us, right? So they'll run a multitude of different scenarios to try and make those decisions and help the managers or the directors who are running and the analysts who are running those scenarios. Then at the executive level, or taking it a little bit up a little further, people are also using it to try and predict where are we going to land on a monthly basis, right? With our income statement, with the balance sheet. So you see people creating what they call predictive forecasting or predictive analytics, cognitive tools to try and help you think through, what if we do this, right? This is what it may look like. And then they'll also assign like a percentage of probability, right? So that you can get more comfortable or not with whether you should make that decision or not, right? It might even be a business decision, right? If we decide that we're going to reduce our sales or reduce some of our pricing in sales, what does that do? It dries up our sales, but what's the net effect at the end of the month, or a quarter from now, or a year from now, or 18 months from now? So and those have been around for a while, right, Jim? But being able to use the tools we have now to provide more information to then create more, thousands or millions of iterations to generate those models to determine what decisions we could make and how the impact would be to us. That's what we see people doing.
Yeah, I think that's super. Like, you think about that we were talking about with Lane, right, from a synthetic data generation perspective on the manufacturing side, but in finance, we could model the business essentially right around that and create scenarios and watch how it plays out over a period of time.
Yes. That's
awesome. That sounds like I think I'd love to have that that capability. Maybe it was today's Fed day, right? So when they're talking about things, I'm sure they're running some of those scenarios for us too to figure out what's going on. Great. Well, I was thinking a little bit more about since too. Want to talk about, like, these are great ideas. These are fun things to transform organizations with. At the end of the day, though, we still have to get business cases approved. We have to get organizations with leadership to put the investment dollars behind it. Lane, I was curious, like, what you're seeing from a business case perspective, how people are able to justify some of these things in the light of all these conversations around cost transformation and sort of how to become more efficient. How is that working? What are some of the things our clients are struggling with that?
Yeah, so if you look at supply chain, some of the business cases are very, very tangible. If you reduce a point of spend in the operations, depending on the size, that could be millions of dollars to hundreds of millions of dollars. And so if you believe in those numbers based on measurement, getting a business case approved isn't necessarily the issue. The issue is, do they believe they can do it? And so we've done some reports, and what we did is we have something called, smart operations, digital supply networks, and we've seen that that we can reduce forecast accuracy by 20% in some of our solutions. That we can reduce inventory by 20 to 30%. You can reduce cash cycles by greater than 10%. These are very tangible numbers, right? So in this space, we can see that, and there's more. Actually, I would also say, looking at what some of Marty does, health, safety, and ESG is very important. And if we can reduce safety issues in a manufacturing plant by putting a smart goggle and training, there's a business case there that's a little more qualitative, but of course, has a very important feedback to the company. So there are some very hard things in the supply chain, hard meaning and the hard dollars that you can measure in many cases. What's often harder is the infrastructure investment behind that to show that they're linked. You can't do one without the other. And that's really where we have to link those business cases together.
Makes sense.
Jim, same thing in finance. There's some real tangible areas that make up that business case. And so what we see is, for instance, a 10 to 30% optimization in your working capital, right? That's real to the organization utilizing AI or any of the other new generation technology. And it's part of the overall finance transformation business case, right? It could be a one-time thing or it could be holistic for years and be part of this complete change of the finance of the future, if you will. We also see it in productivity, real tangible results hitting the bottom line, 30 to 60%, in or decreases in productivity, which translates to, like Lane said, directly to operating cost reduction, right? And you can use that to redeploy those funds or budget to different areas, or just keep it in your back pocket if that's something you need, right? So those are two areas where we see business cases being developed, along with just I would say the full transformation, right? We're going to change the functions we're going to provide. We're going to change the types of people within our workforce, but they all go hand in hand together in finance.
Yeah, and if I would tie into that, Juliana, because finance and supply chain are so tied together,
Yeah.
Often what we see is a real big improvement in just efficiency in back office. We automate processes that weren't automated before. Because of that efficiency, which kind of pays for the program, then we're able to generate the insights to help working capital. Then we're able to do the analysis on procurement or synchronized planning. So sometimes we can get clients that are very hesitant on the very end business case to buy in the efficiency, or invest together with them on the business case. Because if we believe it ourselves, then our clients sometimes will take that to market themselves too.
And I'll just layer on a little less about the HR function, handle that on the backside. But again, Lane, you were explaining the impact of the workforce on the factory floor, right? And so that's where HR comes in, and just making sure, number one, that the HR function is in the business case, right? And the role that they play, and what you described, Lane, and what you described, Julian, in being able to train those individuals, whether they're in finance, supply chain, or wherever they sit, right? And how some of the training aspects I mentioned earlier could play in there, as well as just ensuring that the change management is accounted for, right? Because what you guys were describing has a big impact on the employees, right? And I think that goes into something that I was reading up about around, approximately 80% of the U.S. workforce could have at least 10% of their work tasks affected by the introduction of large foundational models, right? So again, with 19% of the workers may see 50% of their tasks impacted. So as you think about that, that's a lot of change, right? And of course, a lot of worry. And it's important to make sure you've counted for all of that. And then going back to the HR function itself, a lot of times our clients are honestly struggling a little bit around forming a big business case around, these areas. Lane, to your point, there's things that dollar signs just jumping out in your area, and same with you, Julian. Maybe not so much within HR. However, diving deeper will help to uncover those incremental, cost savings that can, you can benefit from a full enterprise leveraging, right, of Gen AI and things like that. So.
Yeah, this is really insightful around the business cases and sort of how to find the value, right, and tie that back to the organization. One of the things sort of I feel like is it's really hard to do this alone, right? Both within the organization, it requires sponsors across teams. You mentioned finance and supply chain working together, HR, finance and supply chain working together. What's your perspective on what you're seeing outside? So like the ecosystem partners and the players that kind of can do in that space, so the software providers, the cloud providers that are helping in this space, or even to some extent some of the BPO providers that are supporting client organizations. How are you seeing organizations work effectively with them? And what are you seeing to sort of learn from those experiences? I mean, I'll toss it up to you guys to see who wants to jump in on this one first.
I can try. It's a broad question, and admittedly complex. What we're seeing is most of our clients are choosing a cloud superscaler or 2 or 3. That's the base for everything. The days where your ERP vendor is your vendor of choice and everything with that ERP, that is actually not working because of the ability to connect digital to physical worlds, the complicated environments where it's not all single ERP, and the ability to do best-in-class AI and things like that. It's not as common as it used before. And because of that, we're seeing a lot of new software, especially like in synchronized planning and intelligent supply. There's new vendors that are out there, AI vendors that focus in on supply chain, and probably way too many I can even possibly talk about in the smart factoring space, doing edge processing and hybrid processing. And if you look at the super scalers, they even themselves realize that they can't do that investment quick enough, and are relying on partners in most cases for those things. And that doesn't even that doesn't even talk about the cloud partners like the big data warehouse guys. And I don't know how much I should mention those guys and specific ones, but working with the cloud providers to make them more scalable. So what it's showing is there's just a lot of investment because it's a broad space to pull it all together.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, what I've seen too in some of these situations, Lane, is like there are a lot of like the small players, the large players, how you navigate them. You can put a sort of wall chart together about all the different vendors that sort of fit into the mix, and trying to figure out how you also piece them together in the right relevant architecture can be really challenging, right? Just figure out how you make sure this whole thing works together as a structure is super important to the conversation too. So, I think that's really important. I don't know, Julian, are you seeing anything else from a ecosystem or alliance partner perspective in the finance space?
Well, I mean, we're definitely what Lane explained is causes, and it's a good thing. New roles are being developed both internally and externally to try and manage all of the different ecosystem partners who have to interact with each other, right? And so instead of in the past, you might just have a direct relationship with each one of your partners, like Lane said, maybe it's on the software side. Now that they actually might have to interact with each other, right? So you need somebody to facilitate those conversations to make sure that what's being done still is working towards your organizational goals, right? And your technology alignment. So we see that happening a lot, Jim, because the other thing is we're dealing with thousands of suppliers and thousands of customers, and they make up that ecosystem as well. And they're all sending in, digital information or data from their disparate sources, and we have to translate all of that so that it works correctly, right? And kind of like what Lane says, there's you might have one, maybe even two suppliers. And I talked to a client a few weeks ago. They had 8 different finance planning and analytic and analysis platforms because they were global and they had just developed through acquisitions. And so they had to manage that. Plus, they were trying to onboard adopt a lot of supplier onboarding and e-invoicing. And again, multiple different platforms or software solutions to do that. So they're looking for a way to try and consolidate it all. So they're building, a team that will manage this. And then from there, they're going to take a step back and say, okay, can we standardize on a few tools, or at least, like I said earlier, create this business platform to manage that as well. So that's what we're seeing happening in finance.
Yeah, it makes sense, right? I wonder if they're accounting spreadsheets as one of the 8 financial planning analysis tools.
They were
different versions of
maybe
Excel,
not
right?
database. I don't know if that's going now.
Yeah, exactly. It's consistent. I think that makes a lot of sense. Maybe as we start to sort of tail into the conversation, this has been great, you guys. I really appreciate all the insights you've been sharing. Maybe we could step back for a minute and sort of go around the group and maybe summarize or take what you're thinking as sort of like the one key takeaway that you'd want to leave folks with as you think about AI and data and how it's transforming some of the activities within your functions and really driving sort of step change in the processes, really driving efficiencies in the organization, to leave for the group. Maybe, is it all right, Marty, if I tap on you first, get your take?
Yeah, definitely. What I would say, like we've been talking about, is just be open-minded around it, right? There's inherent risks that come along with this as well. Also, just from a shameless HR plug, is just make sure that HR is part of everything that's done, just because of the aspects of the impact to the workplace and workforce and the work, right? And how HR can help, whether it's in supply chain or finance or in the function of HR, to be able to deliver that and change it. And then, look at those areas that cause a lot of churn, right? We've talked about digital recruiting, right? Matching skill sets. How does that work? How can we use it there? We also talked about perhaps the other side of the world in payroll and how it can help, right, with balancing all of that too. So just keep that open mind and be sure to bring in your HR teams, right, to help enable all this.
Yeah, it makes a ton of sense. Julian, over to you.
Similar to what Marty said, just extrapolate on that, but talk to your team, right? Let them know why you're doing it, get them involved in the decision-making process. Let them know that this is going to eventually open up other opportunities for them to grow their skill sets and grow as professionals. Because we as humans, sometimes when change comes, we have a tendency to push back and not embrace it. So I think that's a big thing, is to include those people, show them how it's going to change their professional lives, and that it's exciting. And, we're going to move into a new frontier instead of just continuing, at least in our space, processing a lot of data.
That's great. Lane, final thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, without echoing everything that Julian and Marty said, we often say, think big so that you have a big vision and you can understand and sell that vision internally. But start small and something that you can show some success with, and that's very important. I have a client right now who just started on something that was way too big, trying to do a whole customer portal across their business, and it lost a lot of momentum. And then that same client did something a little smaller that was more focused on actually margin in a specific area, and that's what's being used. And the other one's actually being seen very negatively. So start small so you can get some successes, and then run and go faster and grab people along. And what I've had some direct conversations with our clients. The people actually on the programs are really super excited about learning AI and data and cloud. They don't often get this opportunity, especially their newer mid-generation hires. They're very excited, so they're engaged by talking with us. So try to find those people to work with us as we go through and deliver.
Awesome. Well, thank you guys very much. I really appreciate your time today, your insights. We talk a lot about how our clients can drive evergreen value. Prior sessions talking about sort of treating data as an investable asset. Well, this is a great example of how you can really invest in your data to then transform functions, really drive process improvement, drive efficiency, improve the bottom line. And I think in general, sort of keeping a better place to work and creating an environment where people are enjoying the work that they're getting the opportunity to do in the client organizations. It's a really exciting conversation. I think really great insights. What I want to point everyone's attention to next is we have our next session coming up on June 7th, where we're going to talk about the concepts of AI COEs. We believe this is a super foundational component to how organizations adopt AI. We're going to have one of our clients on as well to help engage in some lively Q&A and hear some lessons learned and insights from that team. So thank you guys very much. Appreciate those that could make it today, and looking forward to seeing you in the next session. Take care.
Artificial intelligence is taking humans to places we couldn't go before. That's what makes this the age of with. The next question is, where can humans take AI? AI is an ecosystem we all contribute to and benefit from. The next important insight could come from anywhere. And with so much happening so fast, this ecosystem needs a focal point. We created the Global Deloitte AI Institute to answer that need. What role can AI play in my business? How can we use AI in trustworthy and ethical ways? Why isn't there more diversity in the AI workforce? How does my AI career start? And where is AI going next? The Deloitte AI Institute is leading the global conversation on AI. We are connecting businesses, universities, think tanks, policymakers, and startups. We are highlighting today's visionaries, data scientists, and emerging trendsetters. From the boardroom to the college lab, the Deloitte AI Institute is bringing forth insights and using our deep knowledge of all aspects of AI to make sense of this complex ecosystem, cutting through all the hype and providing insights to help enterprises make informed AI decisions. I'm Beena Amanat. I'm the Executive Director at the Deloitte AI Institute, where we are not just preparing to meet the AI future, we are shaping it together. Join me online to find out more.